Brilliant.
We'll certainly win either the Champions League or the league title, I'm sure of it.
Oh, Nidhi, that is
I think
big.
the league title's easier.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Menace and the Monk. Today, once again, it's a very, very special episode, very special podcast, very special video because appearing for the third time on our channel, Babuyagu, aka Stephen Drennan. Stephen, thank you so much for being part of our small little YouTube channel once again. Stephen, before we start talking about Liverpool, the season, the preseason, the transfer window, how have you been, Stephen, and where have you been? It's been long.
Yeah. It's really weird, but since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, my mind just hasn't been well. Like I just doom scroll a lot and read a lot of nonsense online. And it's kind of hard not to, like, when things like that happen. If a war breaks out, it kind of affects everyone. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of that. And so I found it really hard to like focus and concentrate and do any work. And then over the summer, I was meant to get back into it and I just got really sick. I got like a flu really bad. It's the first time I've had a flu in like my adult life. And it just wiped me out for like a whole month. I'm still recovering. So I just haven't been around too much. I'm planning to come back now and like towards the end of this month, starting next month and start doing things again. But it's just been like a hard 2022 so far, I guess. Not really much more to say, sadly.
Is this your first podcast, Stephen, after appearing back on the scene?
Yeah, I've done like a little Q&A podcast on my own channel, which was more about me testing my equipment, but also just to see how my voice held up talking for a bit, because like that was my biggest problem. I was coughing a lot and my throat got really dry when I was talking. So I was working out that I could talk for like 5 to 15 minutes without coughing or needing to drink loads of water. So I'd done it in like a Q&A format, so I could record a little bit and then edit it all together as like 10 separate things edited together as one. And it was just to get something out there to say the podcast is coming back, but also to see where I was at physically and also just test my new setup. I've got a new mic now, which hopefully you guys are hearing. It's all good. It's like a pro mic with the big audio arm thing that holds it and it holds it in front of my face so that I don't have to try and like crook my neck to talk into something that's low down. And it was a bit of a mess in the past, but it's better now. Oh, I think you said it's the third time, but there's actually been 4 episodes, right? Because one of them was like a double episode we recorded.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah, because I was thinking the 4th in my head, and I was like, oh wait, did I make one up?
But
did
it's
I record a podcast in my head?
It's a privilege to speak with you for the 3rd time. Maybe this is the 4th episode, right, Nidhi?
Absolutely. I mean, see, Stephen was AWOL for a little bit, and of course, you heard the reasons why. But as soon as I saw that Stephen is back, I reached out. This would be the right time. And digging right into it, Stephen, what have you made of the preseason so far? I mean, we've played 3 games. We've famously lost one to Manchester United. But what have you made of our season so far?
Yeah, it's a bit random. I try not to pay too much attention to results in pre-season. That like I posted even before our matches kicked off. I kind of knew that our first match would be a problem because we usually play like Bradford or Tranmere or someone like that in our first match, because the idea is it's just about getting a first match back and getting some fitness and getting everyone a run out. We made like 32 changes in the team, so it's like in one match it was ridiculous. It's not a proper match, and no one cares. It's just about fitness. But because it's Manchester United, and also because everything now is given more importance, because everything is televised and built up by the media into being a big deal. So it seemed like there was a lot of people getting overly excited about something that has absolutely no meaning at all. And I think that's sort of generally true of pre-season. I remember I posted before the game as well that like our pre-season back when we won the league, and we went like 27 games unbeaten, winning 26 at the start. Before that, our pre-season was terrible. We lost like 4 games in a row almost, I think it was, or won drew 1 and lost 4, something like that. It was really bad, basically. And then we won the last preseason game against some weaker European side, and it didn't really give you a lot of hope, but because it's just like 1 game out of 6 in preseason that we didn't lose. And then we just dominated the league. So it just shows you it's about getting things right for the league. The actual results don't matter. There's no analysis of them needed. It doesn't matter. It's always better to get into a winning habit, but we've shown in the past it has no bearing at all on the actual season. I remember having great pre-seasons where we battered teams and then just looked terrible when the league started. And there's also a problem about peaking too early. Like you don't want to peak in pre-season because then you're going down from pre-season. You want to be peaking when you're already in the season. So even the first league games of the season, often they're a bit slow, because the aim isn't to peak really early and then just be on free fall for the rest of the season. You're needing to build up as the season goes on, and then you kind of want to be peaking towards the second half of the season when all the cup knockout competitions start. And I think we did a good job of that last year. We were great in the second half of the season, and if we repeat that this season, that would be great again, obviously.
Stephen, you mentioned something about you. I mean, we all don't look too deep into what's happening in preseason, but me and Nidhi saw the game together, the last one against RB Leipzig, and sure, we won that game handsomely, but there was something which really, really made me happy was the pressing. Already the third game of the season, preseason, with the pressing was great.
Menace, there was one more thing that made us happy, but let's come back.
Okay. Let's get to that first. Darwin Nunez. Stephen, what are you making of the signings that we've made, and especially potentially the club record signing Darwin Nunez? He comes from the continent where you reside now. I think half of Liverpool's team is now based around you. We got Brazilians, we got South Americans.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as well, I said that all the forwards we've signed recently speak Portuguese, which is interesting. Darwin Nunez, Carvalho, Jota, and Diaz are all Portuguese speakers, which is interesting. Then obviously we've got Thiago and Fabinho and people like that in the squad, but we're building up a big collection of people that all speak Portuguese. Firmino obviously is already here, Portuguese as well. We can have a whole forward line just talking Portuguese to each other. I think Salah's going to need to learn Portuguese at this rate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. I always liked Darwin Nunez when I was watching him against us. That's probably the only times I've watched maybe full 90 minutes of him would be the games against us, and maybe I've watched him for Uruguay a few times. But he really impressed me. He reminds me a lot of Fernando Torres, and I don't really like making comparisons to players, but it's kind of really hard to ignore. He's kind of...
Is it just the hair? Is it just the hair?
He's big, but doesn't move like a big player. That was the thing I always remember about Fernando Torres, is he was someone that could stand up to the physical battle of someone like John Terry and be fine with it, but he could also just run him ragged with pace. He gave Vidic absolute nightmares because of that, because Vidic wants someone to basically play up against him and be physical with him, and Torres can do that, turn him and just burst away from him, and he just couldn't deal with Torres at all. And that's why I'm really excited about Darwin Nunez, because he physically has everything you want from a forward. And then it's just a question of whether he has good movement, good timing, intelligent, knows when to run and when to stand still. How good he is at double movements to lose players in the box just in a split second before the ball comes in. And he's got all of that. And then it's about finishing. Can he finish? And that goal where he scored for us the other day, where he just rolled it into the far corner, that was such a Torres goal. That when I saw Torres doing that, I knew that we had an elite finisher, because of the way he just waited until the right moment to put it past the keeper so the keeper couldn't get down to it. And Nunez can do the same thing. It means he knows how to finish. He knows how to set the keeper up to be beaten. And he knows how to get rid of a defender's attention to get a shot off. And it's great to see. And I'm very, very excited about him. It's kind of hard not to be. It's not because of the 4 goals. It really isn't, because one of them's a sliding tap in, which is obviously nice to score. One of them's a penalty. It isn't about that. It's about how he plays. His movement is up. You can even see that before, when everyone was laughing at him. I was saying his movement's ridiculous. He's going to be an absolute menace, and you need to be in the position to miss chances. I remember Alex Ferguson saying this about Andy Cole. Andy Cole was getting terrible stick at one point, and Alex Ferguson said, I'll only be worried when he isn't getting chances. Because a forward who's getting chances is going to start scoring tons of goals. And that's kind of always been my worry with Werner at Chelsea as well, is that like he looks like someone that could just explode into a goal scorer. And I would quietly tip him to have maybe a good season this season for Chelsea if he's still there, or wherever he ends up going to after Chelsea. He can't just keep missing chances. So the law of averages sort of denies it. But yeah, it's the same with Nunez. I always knew he was going to score a lot of goals. You can just see it in how he plays. He always gets into the right positions, and he's very good at losing a marker. His leap for headers is insane. That header he almost scored as well kind of showed that. He's just a full package. And it reminds me of whenever we had Torres, and he was like the best number 9 in the world at the time, and people just couldn't play up against him because like he's great in the air, he's fast, he knows how to lose his marker, he can be a predator in the box, he can beat people. His technique's just unreal. That goal he scored against Blackburn where he chested it and volleyed it, like no matter what you do with Torres, he's still a threat. And I think we have someone like that now as a 9. He's just going to be a constant, continuous threat. Jota isn't that. Jota's a poacher. He isn't like a constant menace for teams. Defenders aren't terrified of him. He doesn't give them the shits. Nunez is going to do that. Nunez is going to treat people like Torres treated Vidic.
Well, I'll come to you, Manas, and one of the things with Nunez is the fact that, of course, as we've spoken many times, this is perhaps the first established striker that Klopp has signed at Liverpool, right? Are you expecting us to play any differently, Manas, next season onwards? The whole talk about a 4-2-3-1 or anything really?
Nidhi, like we've spoken quite a lot on our channel, we expected that, and even in the press conference before our first preseason game in Bangkok, Jurgen Klopp did mention the possibility of playing a 4-2-3-1, just playing 2 midfielders, because the questions were asked about whether we will sign one more midfielder. We'll get to that later. I'm sure we'll hear what Stephen has to say about that. But to be honest, we haven't seen that. I saw the first game, I saw the third game. I didn't see the second game because it wasn't televised. But from the first and the third game that I saw, I didn't see us play a 4-2-3-1. I saw us play a 4-3-3. And, we played the 3 midfielders. I did expect with the signing of Carvalho, because Carvalho played behind Mitrovic as a number 10 for Fulham, and he did so well. Darwin Nunez, like you mentioned, is that striker. The only striker which we've signed under the Jurgen Klopp era is Solanke, and I think Bournemouth. I don't know where he is exactly. Didn't play much for us. Even when we had Divock Origi, he didn't play much. I'm really curious to see how we integrate a striker. So a 4-2-3-1, I don't know. Stephen, I'll push this to you. Do you think we will play a 4-2-3-1 often? And maybe extending that question, Stephen, do you think someone like a Darwin Nunez is a sure shot starter this season in his first season?
Yeah, I mean, I expect Darwin Nunez is going to play more often than that. But I would also say that, like every single player that we sign, I would wait 12 months and assess. Like he might be someone that Klopp wants to ease in just for that reason. He doesn't want to put all that pressure on him. He wants to gradually get him used to English football rather than throwing him in and wearing him down. I think we saw that a lot with players at Chelsea. We saw Havertz struggle initially, and then he was great. And we saw Werner struggle and just never really found his level again because the pressure just built up on him. And he's just never found that level he had at Leipzig. And I think those are sort of the warning cases that we have is that throwing someone in early and when they're maybe not adjusted to the Premier League and putting a lot of expectation on them and having them maybe fail more than they succeed and maybe getting that into their head, that's not a great idea. And so maybe we do take it a bit easier with him, but I expect certainly the second half of the season and beyond, he'll be flying. It very much just depends how quickly he settles in. He could be like Diaz. He could be right away from first day, he's just banging the goals in. And then you're like, well, there's nothing to worry about then. Really, just take it easy, make sure you rotate him in the cups and stuff. And but yeah, he'd probably be leading the line more often than not. In terms of how we play, I wouldn't get too bogged down in the formation. I think the formation probably depends more on the players behind the forward rather than the forward himself. And the reason I say that is just simply because no matter what the formation is, you can kind of play whatever way you want. I remember Roy Hodgson getting really offended about him being asked about a 4-4-2, and he said that like Jurgen Klopp's Dortmund were playing a 4-4-2, and nobody was criticizing them, and it's because well, yeah, that's because the formation doesn't matter. It's what you're doing tactically. Like the roles that each of those players play in a formation was entirely different. So like Roy Hodgson likes his fullbacks basically standing up against the goalposts for 90 minutes, whereas Dortmund's fullbacks just dominated the flanks, and that gave them more players in the middle. The forwards stayed more central. Midfielders stayed more central and between the lines, and so it just changes entirely how you play. And I think that I wouldn't get too tied up in the formation. No matter what the formation is, Nunez will still play the same way, and we'll still see people doing the same things in similar positions. I would also say that in terms of tactics, you always have to be evolving. You rarely see a team stand still from one season to the next and do well. And things will change this season. And one of the things I pointed out was with Salah. I don't know if I mentioned it last time it was on the podcast. I certainly mentioned it on a podcast. But if we kept Salah, we would have to evolve him as a player because, like Lionel Messi, you can't be in the box and as a playmaker coming deep when you're in your 30s, because you don't want to be making those sprints all game, every game. As you get into your 30s, you'll start picking up more injuries and you'll start running out of energy. And so Messi evolved. He was less of a goal scorer and more of a playmaker. He played more between the lines. He wasn't getting in the box as much. And that was from like his early 30s. It just started ticking down a little bit. And now it's very, very apparent. He isn't a goal scorer anymore. He doesn't really get into as many goal scoring positions. And I think we'll see that with Salah as well. Salah's going to become more of a playmaker for Nunez. And the new guys, Nunez and Diaz, will be Salah's legs. They'll do all that running for him. Nunez will be the one stretching teams in behind. And Diaz will be the ball carrier, coming really deep, the way Mane was early in his career. He'll come really deep and carry the ball. He'll be the one making sprints up and down the flank all game, every game. And Salah's going to be, he's going to have a lesser physically exhausting role, let's say. And so I think that's what we'll see from Salah. And
will he be okay with that? Stephen, will he be okay with that? Because he signed this new bumper contract, making him the highest paid player ever in the history of the football club. Do you think Salah would be okay with that role?
I think he'll be realistic with himself about what he's physically capable of doing. And it will become a point where he will know himself that he can't be in two places at once. And he doesn't want to be making all of those sprints because he'll just wear himself out. And he wants to be someone that's like playing late in his career. He's talked about this, like playing into like his late 30s, the way Ronaldo is and stuff. So if he wants to be doing that, he also needs to be smart about how physical he is on the pitch, how much he's sprinting every game. And so I think it will just tick down. I'm not saying it'll like flick a switch overnight and next season he'll just be like standing on the pitch between the lines all the game. But I think we'll just see him do less sprinting and gradually as his career moves on. I don't think in like 2 years' time he'll still be making those sprints in behind all the time. I think it'll be for other guys. So it's this is more a general comment on his next 4 years rather than like starting tomorrow, this sort of thing. But I think that will change. I think the signings we're making are clear that we're trying to build a formation that's basically not Salah playing in behind. I think Diaz and Nunez are guys that will make those runs for him. I think also the other thing I noticed in pre-season right away, and I mentioned it in each of my 3 threads following our matches, was we were looking for very early through balls for Nunez, like constantly. And that's something we've never done before. We're not constantly looking for those early through balls for Nunez playing on the shoulder, because Jota doesn't really make those runs all the time. And Firmino's someone who comes towards the ball rather than runs in behind. We would tend to like build up an attack and then play in one of our either Mane or Salah, who were coming in that space between the fullback and the centre back. But now Nunez is literally standing on the shoulder of the defender, just waiting to sprint in behind as soon as we win the ball. And when we win it high up the pitch, like when the goal he scored, where Stephen, what's his name, Babuyagu, won the ball back. and it went straight through to him. He was on the shoulder, and that's how he got that goal. So I think we'll see a lot more of that. We'll be pressing high. It'll be a lot like Dortmund. If you watched Klopp's Dortmund, he always played with a 9 that looked for those goals. Barrios and Lewandowski, and then later Aubameyang. And he always had a forward who would look for those goals. And I think we'll see more of those.
Nidhi, do you think those through balls, cutting edge passes will be provided by someone like Fabio Carvalho more often this season, Nidhi?
Well, I don't know if that will be done by him, but I can tell you that I'm extremely excited by whatever I've seen of Fabio Carvalho. He, a lot of times, and even during this transfer window, there is a lot of talk about a midfielder who can unlock defenses. Although, I don't quite understand what that fully means. But I'm really excited. I mean, he is, definitely someone who, look, I mean, this guy set alight the championship with playing behind Mitrovic. What's he gonna do with playing with Salah, with Jota, with Firmino, Luis Diaz? I am really, really excited. I love his understanding with the team already. He's already making those runs, those through balls, like you said. He's getting into those positions, and most of all I like how mature Fabio Carvalho is. Stephen, what have you made of Fabio Carvalho from the preseason, whatever you've seen of him?
Yeah, he's another one of those players we have signed that are kind of moving more towards like a dominating possession and penetrating and being able to pick open defenses rather than being a counter-attacking midfielder like Hendo or Milner. I mean, those guys are basically runners. They're very good at pressing, lots of energy, very physical. And whenever we were playing like that, we thrived. They thrived in our team. And I think that was the sort of early Klopp when we were more of a counter-attacking team. Yeah. And we would look to press and win the ball back and then score as a result from that. I think we're now moving more towards being more of a like Manchester City type side. And we've certainly been that for the last couple of years, but this is a continuing that evolution. Guys like Thiago, Keita, Carvalho, even Taki Minamino, and Elliott and Jones. These are all guys who are more penetrative midfielders. They're good at creating space. Henderson and Milner and aren't really going to create space for you, but they're good at exploiting it once it's there. So when you're on a counter-attack, you always already have that space because you've won the ball back. The opposition's still in their attacking shape and they're transitioning, and you can pick them off while they're doing so. So that's when Milner used to rack up the assists, is when we were more of a counter-attacking side. Whereas I think now we're going to face a lot more low blocks and we're going to need to have more solutions to that. Carvalho is just another solution. I think we'll also maybe... I remember when I watched Naby Keita for Leipzig, he was a master of through balls. He used to play them really early and he used to get a lot of assists from those. And he used to frighten teams the way he could just pick those passes. And I think you'll probably see maybe more of Keita doing that as well. In the future, it should be another sort of string to his bow, so to speak, because we don't really see that as much at Liverpool. You don't really see those through balls from him. We've seen like the odd one, but it's just not something that's really been a major part of his game. He's been more of a controller, I guess. He sort of evolved as a player, and he was playing more like a second Thiago more than he was like Keita at Leipzig, I guess. But he's a very penetrative player, and I think we'll probably see more of that in the future as well. Now that he has a 9 that's just going to be running really early and behind, you'll need the midfielders that are capable of switching that mindset of playing the ball very early. And Keita is certainly someone that can do that. If anything, that's what he thrived at in the past before he joined us, and that's what people were excited about with him. So he's kind of... It's good that he's capable of being that sort of controller in midfield, but he's very capable of flicking the switch and being a bit more penetrative 8 and looking for those really early balls into Nunez if we need it.
Well, I don't do predictions, but Manas, I'm going to tell... I'm going to say one thing. Fabio Carvalho will surprise a lot of people. I know we are excited as Liverpool fans, but he will surprise a lot of people this season.
Yeah, I'm super duper excited. Carvalho, and he looks very confident already within the
Exactly.
squad, which I think is great. But Stephen, you mentioned that probably over the next 3 odd years, Salah's role might change because of the arrival of Nunez. And maybe because of the arrival of Fabio Carvalho and the evolution of Harvey Elliott, if it happens. But do you think all of this, Stephen, will have an impact on probably what Trent and Robbo offer as fullbacks? Because our fullbacks are just so attacking. They provide us so many assists. Now that we have a number 9, now that we have someone that could make the run from midfield, I'm talking about Carvalho/Elliott, do you think their roles probably changed minutely or majorly?
Yeah, like I said earlier, your tactical system has to be constantly evolving, and so it's very tempting whenever you're at the top. And I mean, we were literally like 2 games away from winning every trophy last season. It's very tempting to basically say that tactically we don't really need to change much, but you still need to be evolving because teams will be adjusting to what you're doing and working out your system every time they play you. And so we need to have new ideas for next season. And I think we saw last season Trent playing a lot more in the half spaces at times, and he was more central and staying in midfield more. Something I noticed twice in pre-season is he's been moved in the midfield, and then he's made runs in behind beyond the forward. Usually it was when Firmino was playing, because obviously Firmino drops deep, but he was making runs in behind like a goal-scoring midfielder, like Lampard. It's ridiculous. And it's ridiculous to say a goal-scoring fullback, but if this is just like him having fun in pre-season, that's one thing, because that happens. You see that all the time, like players messing about in pre-season and doing things that they wouldn't really do in matches, because it's a time to just like have fun and do stuff you know you can't do, but you probably do when you're playing training matches and 5-a-side. So it might just be that. I saw Van Dijk doing it as well, by the way, in a match, and I made a comment like, are we just going to do this now? Are we going to have like our defenders playing as forwards for a bit? So it might be that that's something we see from Trent, is him moving in the midfield, because he's got a good shot on him. He's a good finisher as well. So we've seen that in training from him as well. He's like someone that plays and like attack and training at times and scores goals. So if he's starting to go like make runs in behind and try and get goals from midfield, that would be interesting. Or like following up at the edge of the box, because he's got a good shot on him. That would be interesting. I'm not going to say that's going to happen. I don't think it'll happen. I think he's just having fun, but it might, because you just don't know what they're working on in training, and whether it's like this is part of a new plan or whether this is just stuff that they're doing because it's pre-season and they're having fun. And so there'll be new things next season, and we'll see it as the season progresses, obviously. And there will be an evolution. I think it's also worth saying that like guys like Henderson, for example, at his age, he's probably not going to be able to start as much as he was in the past. There has to be a point where we start moving him from being a starter into like a backup, just because of his age. He just physically can't play the way we do with a 30-plus-year-old as a number 8. And so I think maybe like he'll either play and share the number 6 position with Fabinho more in the future, or if we do move to a 4-2-3-1, then we'll have 2 6s, and it'll be Thiago, Fabinho, and Henderson sharing it. And so it'll just be interesting to see what we do with Henderson as well. But yeah, I mean, I think, like I said with Nunez about needing 12 months, we probably need to say the same with Carvalho, if not a little bit longer, is that it might take him a while just to settle in and be the player we hope he can be. And it's very easy to see him do things in pre-season and think, wow, he's going to hit the ground running, but that might not be the case. It might be that Klopp takes it very easy with him, and we maybe only see him in the cups and getting some cameo appearances in the league at first. And so it's I want to get excited about Carvalho and get lose my head with him a little bit, but I think we might see him a little bit less initially. He looks like a real talent, though. I'm really excited for him, and his ambition's ridiculous. Like his first interview, he's talking about being the best player in the world in the future, and that's his ambition. And you're like, wow, you're a teenager just signing for Liverpool, and you're talking about winning Ballon d'Or and stuff. It's crazy, but that's the level he's at mentality wise. He wants to be the very best. And he clearly backs himself to do it, because when he's on the pitch, he'll try things that like kids you probably don't expect them to try when they're just joining a new team. So Yeah, he's one to get excited about. But I think it might just take a couple of years before we probably see it, like we did with Harvey Elliott. Like it took a couple of years just before we saw Harvey Elliott's best game. I think he's another one that maybe he's, because of Carvalho's arrival, maybe he isn't getting talked about as much. But I think Elliott's been as good as anybody in pre-season. I think he looks properly over his injury, and if he can hit the form he reached last season in the early games, then he'll be a starter again in midfield. But if anything, I mean, he's going to be even better in the future. That's the way it works with kids. They don't peak at 17. It just doesn't happen. So that's the scary thing with Harvey Elliott. Like if Harvey Elliott was put in these performances with Leon, like every big team in the world would be linked with Harvey Elliott this summer. And he's already here, and we got him for like 4 million or something. So the hype's a little bit lower with Harvey Elliott, but god damn, he's good.
Absolutely. Well, one question I wanted to ask both of you, and it's a question that we see on social media quite a lot, about Trent moving into midfield. Now, when the same question was put in front of Klopp, he said, "Why would you want to move the best right back into the world into a different position?" Guys, do you see this happening, especially in light of what Stephen just said?
So Nidhi, I just want to, if your question ended there, I just want to say no, I don't see that happening. I don't want to see that happen. And I will just put this on Stephen. Stephen, Jude Bellingham, is it going to happen? Do we need another midfielder? Do we need another midfielder? Because
that's another question.
Yeah, categorically, Klopp has denied today that no other signing is going to happen. He was asked about Jude Bellingham. He said that he is not available in the market. That is the big thing against the player, and that is probably the only thing that is wrong about the player, that he is not available in the market. So the midfield saga, Stephen, because we've been reading it on Twitter so often from so many people saying that we need another midfielder. Do we need another midfielder, Stephen? And if you just want to say anything about Jude Bellingham, it's free flow. You can say whatever you want.
All right. Well, there's 3 things there very quickly. So I'll start first with Trent. In terms of Trent playing in midfield, there's a reason why he looks so good at right back, and it's because when you're a midfielder, you need to have 360 degrees awareness. And so whenever we see Trent move into midfield, it's usually in the final stage of your attack. It's in the penetration and finishing stage. But in early build-up, you want midfielders who have 360 degrees awareness, who are very good under pressure and very good at escaping pressure. And these aren't things that Trent's good at. So we probably don't want him as a midfielder in those stages. And if he's playing as a 6 or an 8, he needs to be good at those things. And that's probably why, for example, I remember seeing Trent playing midfield for, I think it was against Stoke and Everton, and he struggled. He didn't look good at all in comparison to how he plays at right back. When you're at right back compared to midfield, you end up with an extra 2 seconds roughly when you receive the ball to do something with it. And that's because in midfield, there's always people around you. Whereas in the fullback positions, you tend to have a bit more space and it takes longer for people to close you down. And when they do, you tend to only be closed down from one side and only by one player. And so when you're a fullback, it's the position on the pitch that you get the most time in the ball. And that's why whenever young players are promoted to the first team, like Steven Gerrard, for example, they often come into the team at fullback, and it's because they get adjusted from the pace of football at like youth level to playing at a Premier League pace. The jump is huge. So if you do that in midfield, then you feel that jump more. But if you're a midfielder at youth level and then you move to being a right back in the Premier League, that change in pace, that you don't feel it as much. And you can adjust to the pace of the game while having a bit more time in the ball than you would in midfield. And then once you're adjusted to the level of the Premier League, then you move into your proper position. So, I mean, Trent played as a midfielder in the youth team. I think he was, Pep Lijnders just talked about this in the past. I think he said he was his number 6 for the youth team. But we've got number 6s. We don't need him there. We don't have a right back like him. We do need him there. But I also think like his strengths are things that come out because he's playing at right back, and they would get lost if we played him in midfield. He would be able to get more shots and he would be able to like have more through balls and be more involved in the build up, I guess. But that's not necessarily things that we need him to do. So you tend to just lose more than you gain. But it also, I think the thing people forget is the whole idea with any manager is to try and negate your players' weaknesses and promote their strengths with your tactical setup. And so because we don't see these weaknesses in players, it doesn't mean they're not there. It just means that Klopp's very successfully built a system around the strengths of his players rather than his weaknesses. So if Trent isn't great at playing in midfield in terms of like 360 degrees awareness and escaping pressure, why would you put him in midfield? That's ridiculous. So I think he'll never play in midfield except for England because Gareth Southgate's an idiot. So that would be my prediction on that. In terms of Jude Bellingham, I think Klopp's language is very deliberate in saying that he's not available this summer and he's not on the market. And that very much implies that Klopp really wants Jude Bellingham.
Exactly.
I think all the language,
Stephen,
all the language from...
Sorry, Stephen, that only means he knows he's not on the market because he wants him, right?
Yeah. All the language from every side of this has been pro-Liverpool. And so that's what I would say. Like Bellingham clearly wants to move to Liverpool. He's a big fan of Gerrard. He wants to try and be the next Gerrard for Liverpool. And like that's crazy ambitions for a teenager and quite the level to try and put yourself at. But he's got all the talent in the world, so why not? And I think it's just that thing about Dortmund only selling one big player per summer. I think everyone's talked about it plenty. But people were saying that like Haaland and Bellingham will both leave in the same window, and Haaland's gone, so we're going to have to wait a year for Bellingham, and so we'll wait because that's what you do when there's a player who's like a potentially game-changing player that's going to be available in a year. You don't sign a stopgap and then you have an extra player in your squad, and it's like Klopp won't do this thing where he signs a player for a year and then just like bins him after a year. It's not going to happen. If we sign a midfielder, it's a 4-year deal he's going to be offered, and the plan is to use him for 4 years. So we don't want a stopgap. Like signing someone who's better than Milner isn't the target here. It's signing someone who will be our best midfielder for the next 5+ years, in the same way as Diaz is planned to be the best winger we can sign for the next 5 years. Nunez, best forward we can sign in the next 5 years. Kanate, best defender you can get for the next 5 years. It isn't about getting just someone who's better than the worst player in the squad in that position, or the oldest player in Milner's case. It's about getting someone who's going to take your game to the next level. However you evolve tactically in the future, you're going to be building it around this player that you sign. And that's why we're aiming for like top tier players now. And I think we're all our signings are going to fit into those two categories now. It'll be people who are like game-changing players. Like Diaz last season was just ridiculous. You could just build your whole attack around him. And the second half of the season, we've pretty much done that. We're building things around Diaz because he was just so good. And our whole attack just changed whenever he played. And it's going to be the same this season with Nunez. And whatever midfielder we sign, we'll have to adjust our midfield and build it around him. And so that's why you wait for the best guy you can get. And if it was Tuchemani, then we would have done that, but it wasn't. Wasn't to be. He went to Real Madrid. So now we'll just wait for Bellingham, and that's fine. And I guess that's what we'll do then. And I'm totally fine with that. This thing about we need a midfielder, I just don't agree at all. It's like, I remember it used to be that you needed 2 players per position for depth, and now we've got 3 in midfield. That's our depth, 3 per position. And you can say about the quality of them, but how can you say there's a problem with the quality of them when we were literally 2 games from winning every single trophy last season? How can you say that our midfield is lacking quality when we've added Carvalho? And it was already absolutely ridiculous. And we're going to have a full season out of Elliott, hopefully, as well. So it's. I also think Curtis Jones goes under the radar, but I really like him. Like, whenever we were playing Man City towards the end of the last season in the 2 games, I went back and watched the first game, and it was noticeable that Curtis Jones was our best player by an absolute mile. I can't describe how big the gap was between Curtis Jones and literally every other Liverpool player on the pitch on the first half against City. Like, nobody could complete a pass, nobody could do anything. Our whole team just looked useless that whole first half. And Curtis Jones is the only player who actually functioned. And I think he had like 96% passing accuracy, whereas at the team we were like in the 60s. It was just like he was the only player that was actually connect and play with the attack, escape and press. Like, Man City pressed the shit out of us, and he was the only player that could deal with it in the pitch. Yeah. Like, I really rate Curtis Jones. I don't understand the criticism he gets on any level at all. Like, the whole thing about he slows down play is dumb as well, because it's like, First of all, if anyone ever watched Stephen Drennan when he first came through, it's the same thing. People, ball carriers hold on to the ball and look for opportunities. They want to suck players towards them because it creates space for others. And they back themselves to then get past 2 or 3 players and open up that absolute ocean of space that they've created. And so it's harder to do that at first team level than youth level. So Jones is going to take some adaptation, but like his dribbling numbers are brilliant. His ball carrying numbers are brilliant. He's really, really good at penetrative ball carries, really good at dribbling. He'll get it right more often than that. And I think it's just people wanting to like beat on a guy because he's like a Scouser or something. I genuinely don't know what it is. Like he's only in the team because he's a Scouser, but like every metric shows that he's good. And if you just watch him, you see it as well. But I think it's just people have just made their minds up and it's really, really dumb. But I think people are sleeping. I expect a big season from Curtis Jones.
Wow. Stephen, but you mentioned about Manchester City. You just briefly mentioned about Real Madrid as well. I was there for the final. One thing that I really saw, and it was very evident that they let the likes of Henderson, Thiago, and Fabinho have the ball all that they want. Manchester City won the league by just 1 point. Stephen, do you think with what we have done, how we are evolving, we have done enough? See, reaching the Champions League final and winning it is, a lot of it is based on luck. Manchester City have been a great team over the last 5-6 years. They haven't won it. But do you think we have done enough in this transfer window, in this preseason, the signings, whatnot, to cover that 1 point and gain that 1 point on Manchester City? Or if we meet a team that knows what has to be done against Liverpool in a big game, i.e. that is Real Madrid, do you think we have done enough? Or do you think we will evolve enough to do it all? I'm not going to say we're going to win the quadruple at all. It's ridiculous. But do you think when it comes to crunch situations, the team has evolved enough to get over the line?
I'm going to split this into 2 questions. The first one's about the Champions League. So basically, last season in the Champions League, no one came near us that we played until the final, really. We were the dominant side in the Champions League. And we got to the final and we dominated that match as well. I have no idea how we didn't win that match. Like, it literally took Courtois to have the game of his life. Salah to miss a bunch of big chances. I mean, the XG in the game as well was outrageous. We just dominated that game. And it reminded me so much of that Leicester game where the guy came on, his name just escapes me now, the guy on loan from
Leipzig, right?
Yeah. I can't remember his name. But anyway, Lookman, that's it. Adam Lookman.
Yeah.
He came on and just literally Leicester's first chance of the game, he scored it. And that was it. That's all it took to win the game. And that, for me, that was the final as well. It was just like one chance scored and we just missed all the chances. In that Leicester game, we missed a penalty. Salah missed the rebound. And we had like 4 or 5 other big chances.
Mane had a great chance, if you remember. Mane had a great chance in that game.
Yeah. And so it was the same as that. It's the final. It's just, and at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the match finished 1-0 to Leicester, because that's what counts on the board. The result is all that matters. But in terms of analysis, you can't just look at the result because that isn't analysis then. That's just like hindsight bias. And no, that was never a 1-0 Leicester game. It was a game we dominated. We created all the chances. Like on an ordinary day, we win that match 3-0, 3-1. And yet this was the random 1 in 10,000 outcome where we lose, 1 in 1,000 outcome where we lose and don't score. And so it's just like the final it wasn't as severe as the Leicester game, but it just reminded me of it. Like if you play that match 100 times, we probably win like 60 of them and draw like 35 of them. And we got one of the 5 in 100 that we lose. And that's just the way it is. That's the way it rolls. There's like 95% of the universe is out there where we didn't lose that match, and we live in the 5% that fucking, yeah, that's the way it works. And it's the same with like Trump winning the election. People said that like we're in the wrong universe, we're in the weird timeline. But that's where we're at. We're in the weird timeline where we dominate the final and just lose. And
but Stephen, again, like, have we done enough to make that 5% into a 3%?
I always say this. People focus way too much on transfers and transfer windows, and The same thing, I say the same thing every summer because the same thing is always said. We've regressed. We haven't done enough in the transfer window. And yet we're getting better and better as a team. So one of those two statements has to be wrong. Either doing too much or doing too little in the transfer window doesn't really matter. Or we aren't actually getting better as a team. It's an illusion. And the second one's measurable. And the first one, I think, just doesn't matter. Recruitment only matters in terms of if you're trying to build a team from nothing. But once you've actually got a team, you're just fine-tuning it. And also in terms of if you look back at the great Liverpool sides in the 70s and the 80s that we had, we never bought starting players. Dalglish was a rarity, but we rarely bought starting players. It was more about buying a guy with a plan to use him in the future that we were going to refine in the reserves. Ian Rush is a good example of someone, but we bought lots of guys who were really young. We would recruit typically in teens and early 20s. And we would get them used to, it means when you recruit really young, you're not having to get them to play in a different way than what they're already succeeding at, which is important. And that's what I was always saying with Haaland and Mbappe is if you sign those guys, then you need to basically build your team around them. They're not going to change what they are. So you need to change what you are to suit them. Whereas if we bang someone like Nunez, he's not as highly established, and he's probably a lot more adaptable to what we are, and because he's a lower profile guy, and that probably suit us a lot better. It was the same with Jota as well, getting a guy that will suit us and be more adaptable to what we are, rather than Werner, who was more established and high profile, and you basically have to play his way to get him to succeed. And I think that's a thing that I would always say is transfers don't matter as much as people think, and also transfers tend to not matter immediately. I also point out in the teams that win the league, if you look at the players that are involved in teams that win the league, it's usually 80% of the players that play, or 85% of the players that play the most minutes, were players that were already there the previous 2 seasons. It's about having a settled side that you just add the one guy that you need to change it, like adding a N'Golo Kante to Chelsea, or United adding a Van Persie. You don't need that much. It's just about adding the one little ingredient that will take you up another level. And that's the plan, obviously, with Nunez. But we've also signed Carvalho, and I think Ramsey's important as well. It gives us another fullback depth in the way we had with Tsimikas this year, so we can do a bit more rotating, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's not like we've done nothing and just. And also, I think the other thing as well is we've got a really good academy side. People don't like youth teamers being promoted because it means you're not signing people. People have this sexual frustration with transfers that I don't understand because I've never experienced it. But it's they need transfers so that they can feel something. And we're not that team. We're not a FIFA team. We're not a football manager team. It's a real team with a real coach who wants to bring through youth team players and make use of them. And I like that, and that's where my head is at in terms of football. That's what I believe as well. And so you need to have a path to the first team for we're being able to pick up guys like Elliott and Carvalho and Bajcetic and all these guys who are really, really highly rated teenagers. Gordon's another one. We're picking up these top young players. If there's no path to the first team because it's clogged up with senior players, then they won't sign for us in the future. Right. If you look at the Chelsea and the Man City, the players that they've got rid of that turn out to be world class, and then it's that won't be us. We're not going to not make use of our young players. We're just on a different philosophy, and trying to force the way you want your club to operate onto them makes no sense, because that doesn't work. You're just creating frustration for yourself. It's people who want Liverpool to be a transfers club, we're not going to be. That's going to be Newcastle. It's going to be Man City. It's going to be Chelsea. Those are transfers clubs. United, the massive turnover of players. It isn't a good thing. Transfers don't always work out, but every single transfer that's made, people get excited about it because it's a big money transfer. But yet United's strike rate on big money transfers, 30% at the moment? It's awful. But yet every single one of those, they were super hype about it. They were really excited last season about signing Ronaldo and Varane and Sancho and all those others. And it turned to shit because it didn't matter. It wasn't that's not how you build a successful team, just with transfers. You can't buy a team. It just doesn't work. Like, there's a point where you can spend enough money that you can just like make your team a lot better really quickly. But like, the reason Man City are successful is because they're also doing the right things off the pitch, and they've got a good coach, and it's not just transfers. Like, you can't just win with transfers. There has to be an actual plan. And I think we've got a very good plan, and it's just about finding the next player we need to solve the next solution, the next problem. And we've done that really well. Like, Canada is a good example last season. It was just about getting the one guy that we needed to solve the one problem we were going to have in the coming season. We got the right guy. It was perfect. And that's what's going to be this season. It's about getting that right guy that solves a problem for us. And I think that's what we've done with Nunez. And next season, it'll be the exact same thing. We'll have a problem in midfield. Henderson will be like 33. He's not going to be able to start games. We need to wind down his career. Milner will move on. Oxlade-Chamberlain will move on. So there'll be a space in midfield for someone to be signed who'll be a top talent. We'll sign one guy with our whole budget, and that's fine. And I'm totally fine with that. And then we'll probably give more minutes to the kids that are coming through, and we'll promote some more youth teamers from the academy, and that's fine. That's a good thing. It's a positive thing.
Right.
Like, that's why we're successful, because we don't have a high turnover in transfers. I view a high turnover of transfers as being a bad thing, always. And it's never going to change. And also, on that note, in terms of catching Manchester City, I think it's a case again if people think Manchester City are going to be the same, if not better, next season. I think transition is your enemy. Whenever you've got a load of different changes happening to your team, that's going to take time. It's not going to be something that just gets solved overnight. Man City have pretty much been their forward line, and they're having to build a new forward line. And it has a very in their forward line in future. Had last season, sorry. So like guys like Jesus and Sterling have like excellent movement, pace. They're small, sort of nippy forwards that used to were very, very good at like running in behind reactions. And Haaland's going to play up against the defenders more and sort of try and bully them. And he's going to be a lot more physical. He's going to need a different type of service. He's obviously like a world-class player, goes without saying, but it's different, which means change, which is a problem. And it's the same with like Manchester City's other forward. Again, the name escapes me. I'm terrible at this. But yeah, he's coming in from like Argentina.
Alvarez.
Yeah, Alvarez. That's it. And he's coming in from Argentina. He's going to need a minute to adjust to the league. It's just the way it is. And there's loads of changes. They might be selling Bernardo Silva. They've signed Phillips. They've sold Zinchenko. They're probably going to sign another left back. It's just, that's a lot of transition they have to go through. So having to do all of that transition while staying at the same level would be absolutely amazing. To go up a level from that, I can't see it. I'm not saying these players are going to fail that they're signing. I'm saying that every time you have a lot of transition as a team, you need a minute to adjust, and City will need a minute. I think we're not trying to beat like Man City from last season. We're trying to just beat whatever a Man City in transition looks like. And that could be like maybe needing like 85 points, 90 points to win the league. I don't think they're putting up another 95 plus point season. I just don't see that happening at all. But I think we could easily do that though. That's like, we're not in massive transition. If anything, like last season, we showed that like with Diaz on the left and Salah on the right, we were already starting to work towards what our plan was for this season. So really, it's basically a case of whether Darwin Nunez or Firmino or Jota can keep at the same level Mane was as a 9 last season for us. Yeah, I can see that. I really can't see that being a problem for us. But if you ask me the same question about Man City and all their signings, like how long it'll take for them just to find their level again, like at a minimum half a season, like it's not going to be easy. And like Haaland will win games for them on like sheer willpower alone, but he'll also have stinkers for them because he's still going to be adjusting to the league. And it happened at Dortmund as well. Like if people didn't watch Haaland at Dortmund, he wasn't like this guy who just scored lots of goals every single game. He had good games. He had bad games. He had games where he didn't get any shots. Like it happened. It's just he needs service, and he needs. If City have a bad game, he'll have a bad game, and if he's not getting the ball, if City can't get him the ball, he'll have a bad game. And if it's just the way it is, and it's true of every single player. Like, I think people's idea of Haaland is basically a bit of a fantasy. The way he's being described, he's not like some god that's just automatically going to hand him the league. I think and I also worry about his fitness record. Like, he's picking up a lot of injuries, and we've seen players come from the Bundesliga, like Keita and Matip and Klavan, guys with spotless injury records. And that adjustment to the like amount of games that you play in the Premier League compared to Germany, and the toll that takes on your body, and having to like do a lot more extra fitness work as a result, it has an impact. And Klavan talked about this a lot when he signed. He basically said his body shape changed in a year. He looked physically like a completely different human being. Both times he's an elite athlete. He was like top athlete in Germany, and then he comes here, couldn't stay fit, kept picking up injuries because he was like physically having to work a lot harder in training. He had to be a lot fitter because you play far more games in the Premier League than you do in Germany. And also there's like there's more rests in Germany because fouls are blown a lot more easily in other countries. So that there's like a lot more transitions in the Premier League, and there's fewer rests. There's a lot more long balls, which means a lot more running, a lot fewer fouls given in transitions. And so it basically means that it's a lot physically harder to play in the Premier League than it is in the Bundesliga. Just in for like little tactical reasons, and just the sheer amount of games that you play, the fact there's 2 domestic cups instead of 1. Training sessions are more focused just on recovery and tactics because the games are constant. So it's going to be an interesting thing for Haaland, whether he's someone else that will just need time to adjust. Even if he just stays at the same level he was at last season, you're still talking like a shitload of injuries and someone who was up and down at different times in the season. Right. So it'll be interesting. I don't think City just stand still, and I don't think they improve. I think City are going to need a year just to get back to where they were at.
Wow.
But guys, I mean, to end this video, we have to also speak about the World Cup. It's going to be something which will influence everyone. I'll get Nidhi's view and Stephen's view, and then we'll end this. If you look at Liverpool, or Andy Robertson is not going to be at the World Cup. I don't think Greece is qualified. So Tsimikas, Trent certainly will be. We have so many players who might not be. Salah is not going to be there. Fabinho might not feature often. Hendo might not feature often. Diaz won't feature. Nidhi, do you genuinely feel that the World Cup is going to play a huge role?
Yeah, I'm saying goes without saying. It is going to be the most crucial thing, I feel. First of all, mentally adjusting to this. This is the first time a major competition, World Cup. I mean, we've had AFCON before that, but AFCON is like a very small.
But the season doesn't stop, right? Even the AFCON is going on. World Cup, everything stops.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's going to be a lot more. I mean, the physical stress is, of course, that's obvious. But even mentally, there's going to be a lot of adjustment that is going to be needed. Theoretically, we are at a better position because a lot of our first team players are not going to be in the World Cup. But we'll have to wait and see how it pans out actually, because the physical part also comes into the picture.
Stephen, what do you think? Like the World Cup being in the middle of this entire season, how do you think it's going to affect us?
Yeah, well, there's 2 things. First of all, having the World Cup in a country where it's going to have the temperatures and expected that the World Cup's going to have this summer, that's mental. Like, I'll even though we've moved it to the winter, it's not a climate, I guess. It's going to be easy for footballers. Yeah. And the second thing I would say is having the World Cup in a country with that human rights record of Qatar, that's fucking ridiculous, and FIFA are an embarrassment for it. And having taken bribes to allow it, that's just, it bothers me every single day that nothing ever happened with that. In terms of the actual football, there's pros and cons. First of all, there's going to be a long period where Liverpool don't play a game, and a lot of footballers at Liverpool don't play much games. And it might be that whenever the football comes back, it's going to be weird and a bit rusty. Yeah. And whereas it might be that teams who have lots of players at the World Cup, their players are sort of have fresh football in their legs and they're better for it. So immediately it could have benefits for other teams and not us. Long term, though, in terms of fitness, we'll have like a mid-season break, and that'll be great for us. And it'll allow us to basically condition ourselves and focus a lot more in the second half of the season. And I think as the season gets deeper, that'll be better for us than teams who have lots of players who are involved heavily in the World Cup. So I think, like, in terms of the knockout competitions in particular, and the last few weeks of the season, like if we're still in all the competitions like we were this season, I think we'll absolutely soar next season. I think we're just going to have probably have a rough January right after we come back from the World Cup. When's it comes back January, doesn't it, the football?
Yeah.
Dates now.
Yeah.
So
I think we resume before Christmas.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was January.
I could be wrong, but yeah. Sorry, Steve. Yeah.
No. So anyway, whenever the football comes back, I think it'll be harder for us maybe than teams who have a lot of players constantly playing. I'm sure we'll arrange some friendlies or have some behind closed doors games to try and stay on top of it, but it doesn't match the real thing, I guess. So it'll be interesting when the football comes back. I have to really look at our fixtures and see who we've got around then. Hopefully we don't have any big games, because that would be a bit of a nightmare. But the fixture list this season's wild. Like, we're getting big games so early in the season, and it's going to be mayhem. It's another one of those seasons where it's just like anything can happen. Whenever seasons have like so many things going on that's a bit weird like this, anything can happen.
Stephen, I was just seeing the last game is on 12th of November, and then we resume on Boxing Day.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So there's a couple of games in December then. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I remember saying whenever there was no fans in the stadiums that season's a bit weird because it's something different to all the other seasons. And it's hard to put a value on that. And I thought that we would struggle that season because we need the fans. Klopp's made a very big deal of building up that connection between the fans and the players. And it's no surprise to me that we really struggled when there was no fans in the stadium. Because why build up that connection if it doesn't matter, if it isn't important to you? So it'll be interesting to see how it goes next season, because it's another thing where it's like we've never dealt with this before. We're not sure how to deal with it. Some teams will get it right, some teams will get it wrong. It's new, and it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. I think it'll benefit us in the long run, but I just think immediately after the World Cup, it'll probably just take like 3 or 4 games to get back into the flow of things again. Might be a case of like grinding out results or having the odd shock performance and result. I don't know. Hopefully not. But yeah, I don't know if it'll have too much of an impact on this season overall, but it'll be weird. I don't know.
Before we let you go, Stephen, what do you think is going to happen? What are you going to achieve this season?
I'll make the same prediction I made last season. We'll win everything. So I mean, that's how I start every season. I think we'll win everything. But here's the thing: is like I always want us to win everything because I'm a Liverpool fan. But there's a difference between like thinking that and just hoping that. I think we'll win everything. I thought that last season. I thought we'd win everything. The fans back in the stadium, our team
almost did. And you almost did.
Yeah, we got 2 games away from winning everything. And in one of those games, we absolutely battered the opposition and should have won. So it's like, it's ridiculous. We could have won everything. So I think we'll win everything. We'll probably end up winning one of the domestic cups just because, like, you know, you have to let someone win something, you know. It's like impolite to just be so dominant. But I think we can win everything.
Brilliant.
We'll certainly win either the Champions League or the league title, I'm sure of it.
Oh, Nidhi,
I think the league title's easier.
Yep.
League title is easier, Nidhi, according to Steve.
Yeah.
Nidhi, I mean, you and me both want the league title, Nidhi.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the one that I want as soon as possible for the obvious reasons. But yeah, hopefully we win it, man. Hopefully we win more. This team, this manager, this group of players, for the quality we put out week in, week out, we deserve way more than what we get. And let's just hope this is the season where we go ahead and do that actually.
Yeah, let's hope that happens. Stephen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being part of Menace the Monk once again. Stephen, do you want to say anything to your fans out there? Are you going to be more regular with your podcasts and pieces of content, Stephen?
Yeah, I hope so. Jesus Christ, I've been awful. First of all, I have to apologize for how terrible I am at actually getting content out into the world. I kind of put a lot of pressure on myself to do it, and I realized that it was like giving myself a lot of stress and doing myself a lot of harm mentally for that, like beating myself up over stuff. And so I'm not going to do that in the future. I'm just going to relax a bit and sort of be more chilled about it, because I think it becomes like a vicious circle. I'm going to stop like promising things and failing as well, because it sucks. But the plan this season is obviously just to be a lot more involved, keep the podcast going regular. I've got all the hardware set up now, so it shouldn't be a problem. It's just about me getting on top of it, and I plan to do that. In terms of writing, I'm planning to start writing again and doing a lot more as well there. But it's that's the plan, as I say. So hopefully I can have a good year this year and get a lot of stuff out there. So I should have a podcast coming out like sometime this week or early next week. And then I'm aiming to do like at least one a week, if not more than one a week. And maybe like the second one will be like me doing a Q&A with myself again or something, because it's easier than doing threads on Twitter in terms of like stress. Like, because if I'm writing all day for work and then having to like write articles and do threads, it's just constantly like, I'm getting old. My hands are old. I've got old hands. I've been fucking using computers since I was like 12, 13. Yeah. And my hands and wrists are just, they're old. Like even right now, my thumb joint's weird. It's like, if I try to turn a key in a lock, my thumb pops and it just hurts. So it's like, just an old man. So I certainly plan to do a lot more, but bear in mind, I'm an old man. I need to take it a bit easy when my body's saying, yo, chill. Which it says quite a lot these days, sadly.
But you should chill more often, Stephen. But we are so happy that you took out the time to chill with us and speak with us. Let's hope that the coming season is fruitful for Liverpool and we win a few things. More importantly, we have a great time. And I hope all of you all listening to us had a great time as well. Stephen joins us for the third time, but the fourth video or the fourth podcast, as he rightly mentioned early on in the video. This was Menace and the Monk. Nidhi and Stephen joining us.
One thing I do want to add. Sorry. One thing I do want to add.
Please do.
My biggest problem with how people interact with football at the moment is in terms of negativity. And I feel that people only find enjoyment like in things like transfers and winning trophies. And yet, so they tend to just suffer all through the season. Because if you win a game and Man City win, then it's just neutral. So nothing's actually happened. And I think people need to find a way just to enjoy football for what it is and enjoy winning games and just allow yourself to enjoy the season. It's not about winning a trophy at the end of the season, because if that happens, then you're just having one moment of happiness for an investment of like hundreds of hours of watching football. So like, try not to think about it like that. Try to just enjoy football. I didn't start watching football to win trophies. I was a kid when I started watching. I didn't even know there was trophies. I was just watching like John Barnes play, and I heard the way the crowd reacted when he got the ball, and it just gave me goosebumps and chills, and I wanted more of that, and I wanted to experience that. And so that's how I started watching football. And it was like, if you're just in football just for transfers and trophies, you're going to be miserable. Like, you are literally just going to make yourself miserable. And why do that to yourself? So find a way to connect with football as a sport and just enjoy football. Don't worry about the trophies. Those are things that will happen towards the end of the season. Worry about that like late in the season. But for now, just enjoy football. Like, if you're watching the preseason friendlies getting stressed about the results, which maddeningly some people are, or how Darwin Nunez misses a chance, you're doing it wrong. Just like find a way just to get enjoyment out of football, because if you're not, you're just going to make yourself depressed. Like, it's just not healthy for you. It's not good for you. It's a really toxic way also to support the club, because you take your own pressures and stresses and you're putting them out into the world onto other people and onto the club, and like abusing the players online. And it's wrong. Don't do that. Just and find a way to enjoy football and find a way to enjoy the results. Don't, just be better. Fuck's sake. It was awful last season, and we almost won everything, and it was an awful, shitty fan base watching them having to like suffer through winning every game. It's fucking ridiculous. Like I see people supporting teams that get relegated or finish mid-table and finish bottom of the league, and they get more enjoyment out of football than most Liverpool fans online, it seems. And that shouldn't be the case. Like, find a way to change how you are as a person so that you're getting more enjoyment out of your hobbies, because that's awful. Like, just change, please.
Absolutely.
That is so fucking true, because I mean, before you end it, Nidhi, I know you're going to end this soon because it's been a long video, but I mean, I remember the first time I saw Liverpool play, it was Gary McAllister. I was 10 years old, and the red team beat the blue team, and he scored in the 93rd minute, and I saw Gerard Houlier's face, and he was like, his mouth was wide open. He was happy, and then the players rushed towards him. It was the Merseyside derby where we all celebrated. We had I didn't know what was happening. My favorite color was red, and the red team won against the blue team. And we tend to forget, Nidhi, that how we started to support the team that we love. At that time, I didn't give a rat's ass about who is winning, what is happening. It was just the right team winning. And Stephen just mentioned it so correctly. Just enjoy what is happening right now. And probably, Nidhi, in your mind, probably not Stephen, because he's seen so much. You mentioned John Barnes. These are the best years, Nidhi.
Well, look, I always, you guys have put it up perfectly, but I'll just say this. Look, this team, this manager, for the kind of joy they've given us, trophies as well. Like, we've won every trophy that exists in England, right? And, this team deserves a lot more respect. It deserves a lot more of our faith. So with that,
Yes.
I'll just end that with that. I mean, literally, players can have bad games. They can be bad 5 minutes or whatever. We'll lose games, make no mistake. But this is the best version of Liverpool that at least I have seen in my life. And with that, let's just end this. Let's try to do better. Let's try to be better this season. This was Menace the Monk. We will be coming up with much more Liverpool content your way. The season is about to start. There is a lot of excitement ahead. Cheers and up the Reds.
Thank you, Stephen. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Stephen.
Bye.